Hey, I'm Guy.
I'm John.
It's our YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. Give this video a like.
Check out our podcast below in the description as well.
I think you and I talked about Jon Gruden the other day, and one of the things I said was even though we all knew when he got hired a 10-year contract was unprecedented, nuts, takes the pressure off of a coach, I don't think I quite realized how in real time, as we're watching it unfold, it would affect the way we don't talk about him in terms of as much as they have come up short of expectations, his job security is never discussed. So it's hard to say when you're not even halfway through a 10-year contract, do you have to do anything? You could argue the guy could kick his feet up, put it on cruise control for 18 weeks this year, John. So does he have to make the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's weird when you talk about him. The hot seat, it's not synonymous with his name when you have a contract that long. But I do think credibility, I do think the way a franchise that made a massive move is viewed. I think a guy that is viewed as right there with Belichick has just unlimited power, right? And you could argue even it feels like more now. Like he just gets to do whatever the hell he wants. I think the playoffs are a must for Gruden, or I don't think anyone will take him seriously. And you could argue that that's already kind of the case. I think, Raider fans get mad at this, but he's kind of a laughing stock. I think the way he's discussed, it's usually sarcastically. It's usually because
by the media, not by like coaches. You do hear coaches not irregularly talk about what a good offensive coach Gruden is.
Yeah, but I think they paid him $10 million to be the head coach, not just the offensive coordinator. Sure. And not just the head coach, right? To build the franchise, to build, just a lasting, sustainable, winning team. And he has one of the most unique career paths I think we've ever seen, at least in this modern game, because he disappeared for so long. And really, think of what anyone watching this right now, what you were doing when he coached for Tampa Bay in 2007. Like, that is so long ago, but he built up so much hype, and he has come back, and has not gone well. So to me, is it a must for him to make the playoffs? Like, well, it's part of just like by year 4 of building something from scratch with a quarterback the whole time, right? That would be pretty nuts in a league that has 2 4 years will have an added playoff team, right? You got to factor that in. I mean, it's like it should be easier. And this year, Guy, the 17th game, right? The AFC, he gets an extra home game.
Yeah, and offense has been really good. He's on his second coordinator coming into year 4. So if they don't make the playoffs, is it his second defensive coordinator that let them down, or is it him and his offense that let them down? Right? Either way, because he's in charge of everything, he has to answer for it. Draft picks, he's got to answer for. I think it'll be really interesting, too. First year with Mark Davis / fans in the stadium in Las Vegas, right? How will that be? Like, I guess if you're Mark, ultimately, most owners just want the money's all green. Fill the stadium. I shouldn't say most owners. There are some that really just care about how many do we sell the tickets or not, right? Mark Davis also cares about it being a Raider environment. Well, it's not going to be a Raider environment going into 2022 if they were, a 6-win football team. Then the road team will still be the bigger attraction. The road team cannot be the bigger attraction for this franchise to really take advantage of where it is. And I don't know, it's still very early in Vegas, what kind of pressure there will be created from within the media community. I can't imagine a lot, because when you're building something, when a team is new, everybody's kind of in it together. It's good for everybody, for everything to just everyone to have access to everyone. And so I think it creates a kind of a weird environment if it's not going well, because that's not really, they haven't really been through any of that there.
I think the pressure actually comes from Mark, because the pressure that's on him, he didn't finance this thing himself. It's almost like the casinos are, they want this thing to be successful so everyone can profit. And I think we gave, and most people did, Mark a lot of credit when they hired Gruden, because he thought fucking big. He thought bright lights. And ultimately, I think we all thought like Gruden, and he paid a lot of money, and it just felt like they would just probably, at minimum, be like in wild cards. And he knew he needed to be competitive going into this new stadium. And it's been the opposite. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to fire Jon, because Jon still is really, really famous, right?
No, but
his fame's there. But ultimately now it's like, well, you got to win. I do think it's a must this year for them to make the playoffs for business purposes and just get the momentum being there. Guy, their hockey team, I'm not some big NHL hockey puck guy. Watch the little playoffs this year, more on the other side, more the other conference. The Knights are still rolling. They are a dominant franchise. Like, they are an elite NHL team right now. They have the number one home. Just listen to some guys on social media, hockey guys. They arguably have the best environment, the home, ice.
I remember it from year one.
And
I remember
they're
being
winning.
in Vegas
They're
their first year, and like you saw their flags, their stickers, it was all over everybody's cars. If I had Mark Davis here for an interview, one thing I would ask him is there a point where you would start dictating? Would you ever dictate a general manager to Jon Gruden? Would you ever force a GM on? Would you ever be willing to try to force a GM on Jon Gruden?
He did when Jon first got here.
Sorry. A GM with personnel power. Would you ever force him to give up personnel power?
Yeah, I mean,
because on one hand, you go, you got a 10-year contract, you can do whatever you want. On the other hand, you can go, I gave you a 10-year contract. I think I deserve to make some decisions around here if I'm paying you a 10-year contract, and we're 4 years in and we haven't made the playoffs, right? I wonder if Mark would do
you think the Vegas Knights' success just adds a little pressure in the area, given it's a unique market because sports were very synonymous with Vegas, so they were always a part of it, but they never had a team, and they finally get a team, and the team kicks ass, and then they get a second team, which obviously the NFL is infinitely bigger than the NHL, so there are going to be way more eyes on it. But if you or me we were 15 years old in Vegas, we would probably be sneaky hockey fans, right? Because this team's kicking ass, and we'd be NFL fans. But then the team we got sucks. Like, that's not a good way to start.
I think it adds
is strong. They've been competitive.
I think it adds pressure from
disaster.
I think it adds pressure from this standpoint. The Knights now look, their arena holds a fifth of what the Raiders Stadium holds, maybe less.
My guess would be 18, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, 18 versus what's 65 at Allegiant, something like that.
Yeah, probably more.
Maybe more.
Yeah.
I think what it show. I think what the pressure is. It's like, look how good. Look at what this town will support. Like, this is not just for fans flying in, dropping in and out. Like, the Vegas Knights are supported by Las Vegas, by the members of this community. Like, there are people here. This community wants you to do well and wants to support you.
Here's why I think this year is so big and why it's a must. No, last year was fucked, right? No one was there. It didn't really necessarily count for your fan base necessarily. This year you're going to have paying tickets. You're going to have people showing up, right? The place is going to be packed. If you could make the playoffs this year, then you just gain momentum for the next three. You just, the buzz grows exponentially. You can then miss the playoffs the following year, but the hype would be huge. This year, the first time people get to come in there, if you can just make the playoffs this year, you kind of set yourself up for an easier next couple years in a new market. But you miss by the margin in which they missed last year. I just think people, like, you're trying to turn these people in this area for you, right?
Yeah.
Because it's always been a little bit like LA, like a national place. Like, I bet you could just pull people walking down, if you just went to Henderson, probably found fans from all over the country, right? Or even if they're from there, that just, I started liking the Cardinals or Seattle or the Cowboys or whatever.
You also find a lot of people in those people's boots who bought Raider hats last year. Like, they're 100%. Here, my team. I remember I lived in Arizona before the Diamondbacks showed up. They hadn't played a game. People everywhere wearing Diamondbacks gear because
that's
our team.
That's our team. That's what I'm saying, Guy. They got lucky last year. No fans. This year, I do think it's amplified pretty heavily, given that people are going to be paying to go to these games, and when you factor in his fourth year, and you have a quarterback.